Welcome back. The House passing a measure yesterday to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress for his refusal to comply with the subpoena demanding the audio tapes from President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Robert Hur. It passed nearly along party lines with just one Republican voting against it, Dave Joyce of Ohio voting against it. A.G. Garland making this statement after the vote: "It is deeply disappointing that this House of Representatives has turned a serious congressional authority into a partisan weapon." Joining me now is Louisiana Congressman, Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Mr. Speaker, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great to see you. Thanks, Maria.
Your response to what Garland said, a partisan situation, is what he's calling this.
It's a rich irony to hear this Attorney General talk about weaponizing a function of government. That's what the Department of Justice has been under his leadership, or lack thereof. The reason that we had to go to the extreme measure of contempt is because he is resisting a very serious and important congressional subpoena. And this is about exercising Article I authority of the legislative branch. We cannot allow the executive branch agencies to decide when they want to comply with a congressional subpoena. And that's exactly what the AG is doing here.
But how far are you willing to go with this? I mean, where does this get you, this contempt of Congress? What does this mean?
Well, it's a slap on the wrist, of course, but it's something that Congress has to do when you have a situation like this. Remember, Maria, what this is about. He is refusing to turn over the audio tape of the lengthy interview that Special Counsel Robert Hur did with President Biden. They gave us a transcript, but the best evidence of exactly what was said in that interview is the audio itself. Since they've given us the transcript, why wouldn't they turn over the audio? It makes you scratch your head a little bit. That's what we need to verify the accuracy of what was given to us in writing. We know that this White House heavily edits things that President Biden says, and they have a history of that. And so we have a responsibility of oversight to ensure that what Robert Hur did and what the decision that he made not to prosecute, what's obviously clear violations of the law, was justified, and that the transcript that they gave us matches the audio. That's a very simple issue, and we are certainly entitled to the information that's being sought.
So was the transcript doctored in some way? How significantly was it changed?
Well, that's the question, right, Maria? We don't know. You and I, no one else can answer those questions except the Attorney General and the handful of people at DOJ who have the actual audio tapes. They have to turn it over to Congress. We're fulfilling Article I responsibilities here, and that's what's at stake. This is about maintaining the integrity of our congressional oversight and that responsibility. And I think that's a very, very high issue, should be an important issue for the American people.
Let me move on, Mr. Speaker. Former President Trump will meet with House Republicans at the Capitol Club in D.C. later this morning to discuss the 2025 legislative agenda. Speaker Johnson, what do you want to hear from President Trump today? And can you walk us through what the agenda looks like?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of excitement here. I met yesterday at the Senate leadership lunch with the Senate Republicans. We began to talk about plans for 2025. Why is that? Because the polling is now indicating what we all feel intuitively. There's a real movement happening, and there's a very high, I think, likelihood now that we will not only have President Trump reelected to the White House, but we'll retake the Senate for the Republican Party and grow the House majority for the Republican majority. If we do that, Maria, we are going to not waste one moment. And so we have to be adequately prepared to begin an aggressive first 100 days agenda of the new Congress in January and the new administration. And look, we're going to do what the American people demand and deserve, and that is secure the border. We're going to revive the American economy. We're going to unleash American energy again and combat this weaponization of the government and the justice system. We have specific plans to do all those things. So talking about it, planning for it right now is an important part of what we'll be doing when we get the levers of control back.
And even before you put this growth strategy in place by tapping into America's energy capacity, you'll focus on the border, right? A new American Immigration Council analysis of Biden's border executive action finds, quote, "At present, the government is offering neither investment nor solutions. It is essentially crossing its fingers that the asylum system will fix itself." DHS Inspector General also finds that DHS has not been effectively screening non-citizens and asylum seekers. This comes after 8 suspected ISIS terrorists were arrested in 3 major cities after illegally crossing the southern border. Fox Business's Hillary Vaughn asked Democrat California Senator Alex Padilla about it. Watch this.
Isn't that pretty bad if our systems in place are literally welcoming terrorists in with open arms?
I wouldn't say that exactly being welcomed, but to me, that just a reminder that Republicans need to stop opposing additional resources for more Border Patrol agents and other DHS personnel to help continue to enforce the law.
They had the personnel and they let them go.
They need more. The Republicans stop getting in the way.
You don't think President Biden has any responsibility for the fact that terrorists are being allowed into this country?
So the fact that they were identified and detained and we know where they are is them doing their job.
Speaker Johnson, your reaction?
It's laughable to try to blame this on Republicans. President Biden and Mayorkas, who we had to impeach, Maria, as you know, that extreme measure was taken because it was necessary. They specifically opened the border from day one. Literally, the first day that President Biden was in the Oval Office, began issuing executive orders. And we documented 64 specific actions that he and his agencies took to open that border wide. And yes, there are known terrorists who have come across, nearly 350 on the known terrorist watch list that were stopped at the border and questioned, but we don't know how many came through totally unevaded, including the gotaways, the millions who have gotten away, and many who came in without being known at all. Maria, all the red lights are flashing, as FBI Director Wray has testified to Congress multiple times now. Why? Because we believe there's probably terrorist cells set up around the United States now, all because Biden opened the border and refuses to close it. There's no way that anybody could possibly think that Republicans have anything to do with this. We've been working on closing the border since we came into office and began in our House majority in this Congress. We passed H.R. 2, the most aggressive border security measure that's ever been passed by Congress. And you know where it is right now? It's sitting on Chuck Schumer's desk in the Democrat-controlled Senate. Well, we are hamstrung in doing anything until we have a president who cares about a closed border, and that's why we need President Trump back in office.
Well, this is very dangerous, and obviously we're all wondering what Christopher Wray is alluding to. I mean, we just heard one lawmaker earlier say we're waiting for another 9/11.
Yeah, look, it's certainly possible because of the dangerous situation that we have here. And you know that they've been distributed all around the country. So all cities, all communities are potentially targets. And it's a very serious situation. You know, we had the congressional baseball game last night. We had 28,000 people in that stadium here in D.C. I'm sure over 100 members of Congress there and staffs and important officials. You know, I was sitting in the stadium thinking, wow, this is a dangerous situation. You know, we're well protected here, but you can't possibly deter every harmful action and every plot and plan, and we have made that possible because of that open border. That's
really distressing. And there's so many unknowns because of what you mentioned, 350 people on the terrorist watch list. Wow. Now, also, the Republicans are eyeing the fiscal year 2025 National Defense Authorization Act as a vehicle to help combat some of Biden's policies on DEI and gender ideology. Speaker, tell us more about that and your timeline for passing the NDAA.
Yes, we're working through that this week, and we should have the NDAA passed by Friday, by the end of the week. And there's a number of amendments, hundreds of them that will be processed through on the House floor. We've been doing that for the last couple of days. And it's really important. We're going to focus on the quality of life for our service members, which is a very important element of all this, of maintaining national security. We need to get back to focusing again on lethality. That's what the military is supposed to be about, and not social experimentation. And we're going to focus on America's national security interest, and again, getting back to the principle of peace through strength. Well, again, though, you have to have the right commander-in-chief to do that. We're setting up what will happen for the next administration. Talking about America's security, the Biden administration banned several Chinese companies from doing new business in America because of all of their surveillance on American citizens. And those Chinese companies, that was put in the NDAA the last time. But what they didn't do, what they failed to do, is rip out all the wiring that's already embedded in our economy from China. Which has surveillance, Huawei equipment, surveillance tools against American business and American citizens. Why not? Why not add that to the NDA? Rip out the existing technology that has China spying on Americans. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, we worked on that in the last rounds of the appropriations bills in the national security supplemental package, where we went for the divestment of TikTok and some of these other threats from the Chinese Communist Party. We have a select committee working on that and putting forward ideas. We have to be aggressive. This is a very, very serious challenge. They're almost a peer-to-peer adversary to us, and you know that's their ultimate goal. China's playing a long game, and we have to be serious about it. We have to adequately fund the military to be able to compete with that. And that's what this NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, a large focus of it this time around, will be seriously addressing the threat of the Chinese. But there's no effort to rip out the existing technology that's embedded in America right now. Well,
that's
no,
Chinese?
look, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of legislative ideas on how to do that. We need bipartisan consensus on it, and we should have it, because this is not a partisan issue at all. This is about the survival of our republic and the maintenance of our position as the last great superpower on the planet.
That's
China
right.
wants to have that position, and we got to take it seriously.
Speaker, I want to turn to the election now, 5 months away. And recently you were with President Trump, and the two of you talked about ensuring that we would have a fair and transparent election, and that you were going to do things to ensure that. A lot of people have come on this program and questioned, where's the bill? So recently I spoke with one, and he raised it. Listen to this.
U.S. elections should be for U.S. citizens. He talked about Texas. You could come right here to the nation's capital in Washington, D.C., where they're encouraging non-citizens to vote. In fact, they just sent out a postcard encouraging non-citizens to vote in local elections. So think about this. You could have an individual working at the Russian embassy, residing in our nation's capital for only 30 days, and they're eligible to vote for mayor and city council. This is a huge challenge. We need to make sure that U.S. elections are for U.S. citizens only. There's legislation to do that. The ACE Act that came out of committee could be ready for the floor any day. I would love to see the Speaker bring forward the ACE Act. It's a comprehensive election integrity package that I have worked on and championed now for over a year, an opportunity to dramatically increase Americans' confidence in our elections and ban non-citizens from voting.
Speaker, that was Congressman Brian Stile, but there were others as well who are wondering where this bill is. You, at the time, were under fire from a small portion of Republicans in your membership. You were with Trump and, you know, talking about election integrity. Where's the bill?
Yeah, it's called the SAVE Act, and Brian has worked on it with us. After he did that interview in early May, we sat down a couple weeks later, and I got him, he's the chair of the House Administration Committee, and then Chip Roy from the Freedom Caucus. We brought everybody together, and we worked on a consensus bill. It takes that time to build consensus when you have a one-vote majority, which is what we've been working through. But we do have the bill. It's called the SAVE Act, and it will absolutely ensure that the states have to have, if somebody's going to register to vote, they have to provide proof of U.S. citizenship. What a concept. We want Americans to decide American elections. But as to Brian's point, currently, states are prohibited in many places from demanding that proof of citizenship. So when illegals come over the border, the Biden administration is shipping them around the country. They're encouraging them to go to local welfare offices, sign up for taxpayer benefits, and when they get there, they get a form that says, check this box if you want to register to vote. We cannot allow that to happen. We're going to pass the legislation out of the House, and we're going to put every ounce of pressure we can on Chuck Schumer in the Senate to make sure that this is done and sent to Biden's desk. If they really care about the security of American elections, they're going to sign this legislation and make it federal law. We have to do that.
What's your timing on that? Because you heard what Merrick Garland said recently. He is vowing to stop voter ID.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's the best evidence of where he stands on this. They want illegals to vote. Everybody asks me around the country, Maria. I've been doing campaign events. I've been in 123 cities in 29 states in the last 6 months. The second or first question in every single public event is, what about election security, and why would they open the border? Because they want to turn them into voters, and their comments verify that. But we've got to stop it. We have a responsibility to do that on the federal level. So far, at least as we have jurisdiction, and that is federal elections, we have got to make sure that only U.S. citizens are voting. I mean, it's a basic responsibility. We're going to fulfill it.
All right, Mr. Speaker, we'll be watching your work. We so appreciate your time this morning, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Speaker Mike Johnson. We'll be right back.